Good evening and welcome. Live tonight on the latest from 7 News. Say cheese, Donald Trump to pose for his mugshot, about to surrender on election interference charges. We're in Crete, parents separated from their newborns, caught up in an overseas surrogacy scandal. Presumed dead, but can anyone be sure of what happened to Russia's mercenary boss? An expert's thoughts. And plan of attack, leaders map a response ahead of a disastrous bushfire season.
The latest from 7 News with Gemma Acton.
We're about to see a mugshot that will go down in history. Tonight, Donald Trump is set to hand himself in, accused of attempting to overturn the 2020 election he lost. US correspondent David Woiwod is live tonight in Fulton County, Georgia for us. David, there's been a last-minute shake-up to his legal team.
Last hour or so, we now understand that Donald Trump is switching out his criminal defence attorney that has been associated with this case now for quite a long time, ever since this indictment, in fact, was actually unsealed a couple of weeks ago. Now, this isn't unusual for Donald Trump. He's very accustomed to actually switching up his legal team, and at the last minute as well. Certainly, it will not stop him presenting here at the Fulton County Prison. Later on today, we are expecting that to happen, in fact, this evening, around 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. Now, the reason for that actually is twofold. Of course, it puts him right in those prime time hours for those cable news networks. It allows them to actually follow this historic moment of a former president actually handing himself over to surrender to a jailhouse in this manner, but also it takes him out of that rush hour as well here in downtown Atlanta, and it makes it a much easier operation for that Secret Service detail that have had to actually coordinate it. Now, when he does eventually arrive here, we have been told that he will be treated like any other person that is coming here to surrender, that he will be processed, he will be fingerprinted, and then, yes, we are being told that he will have that mugshot taken. It happened to a number of his co-accused in this case over the past few days. In fact, his former personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, just yesterday, he posed for that mugshot, and within an hour of him actually leaving this jailhouse behind me, that photo was made public and it had been doing the rounds. So we are waiting to see that image. We haven't seen an image like that of Donald Trump in any of these previous 3 indictments that he is now facing, of course, in New York, in Washington, D.C. and in his home state of Florida as well. Of course, while this is all going on, he is still the far and away front runner of that Republican primary race as well. There was a major milestone last night. The GOP's first debate was held last night as well. 8 candidates on stage, though noticeably absent from that stage was Donald Trump. He decided not to attend that debate, instead opting for an interview, a one-on-one interview with the former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. It was released at the same time as this debate had actually gone to air. So a moment of counter-programming there from the former president to try and suck a little bit of oxygen out of this race. It was a wide-ranging interview. They spoke about a number of issues, but one that really stuck out. He was asked at one point, the former president was asked, what he thinks about the level of debate in this country right now, and does he believe that America is headed for civil war? His answer.
There's a level of passion that I've never seen. There's a level of hatred that I've never seen, and that's probably a bad combination. I got indicted 4 times. All trivia, nonsense, bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, an incredibly tough response there from the former President Donald Trump. Look, he is still, as we say, the far and away leader of this Republican race. He is leading a number of his rivals by 40, 50 points in some cases, and there is no reason to believe, of course, that today's appearance here at the Fulton County Prison, when he eventually does arrive here, will change any of that, including his fundraising effort. Every time he does appear at one of these courthouses or in one of these court precincts, it does just push those fundraising dollars up. Gemma?
A busy few hours ahead for you. David Woiwod in Georgia, thank you. Live to Europe correspondent Ashley Mullaney in Crete, where an international surrogacy scandal is unfolding. Ash, are Australian parents any closer to seeing their newborn babies?
Well, Gemma, we understand that DNA testing is underway at the moment to confirm that these Australian parents are the biological parents of the babies being held at this hospital. When those results are back, it's hoped that the parents will then be able to have access to the children. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll be able to bring them home right away, but it will no doubt be a relief just to see them and hopefully touch these babies. There are 8 babies being held at this hospital in Crete after police raided this IVF clinic, accusing the owner and the medical staff there of child trafficking, of human trafficking, and of exploiting these surrogates. 4 of those medical staff, including the owner, are still behind bars today, and they have been charged with serious offences, facing potentially more than 10 years, decades even, behind bars. So huge questions now about what this means for anyone who has used this clinic. So not just someone who's used surrogacy services, but the clinic also holds eggs and embryos of patients from around the world. So there is huge doubt and huge anxiety at the moment amongst those patients.
Ash, do we have any more details about the surrogates who are caught up in this?
Yeah, so the way surrogacy works here in Greece, it is legal only if it is altruistic. So they get an allowance, an amount of money that would cover their medical bills, but it can't exceed 19,000 euros. And in this case, having spoken to people who know these surrogates well, they said that they were offered a 15,000 euro bonus after going into labour. And for them, that was a lot of money. These are women that have come from places like Moldova, Georgia, Romania. We understand that there are a few women that are being held at this hospital too, and another few women that are still in Crete. Some really heartbreaking stories. I was told of a woman who was caught by police trying to leave Crete with a 9-day-old baby that they don't know who it belonged to, whether it was going up for adoption. And then a story about another woman here who is 5 months pregnant. She's pregnant with a man's sperm and a donor egg, but the man has now said that he doesn't want the child. So she is facing the prospect of having to now raise this child alone because he says he doesn't want it anymore. So there are just layers upon layers of complexity and so many people that are suffering right now as a result of this.
Indeed, a very thorny situation. Ashley Mullaney, thank you. We've heard about the heightened risk of bushfires over spring and summer. Now our political leaders are responding with a plan of attack. Let's go to Josh Martin in Parliament House. Josh, good evening. A crucial meeting is taking place tomorrow.
Good evening, Gemma. Emergency management ministers will come face-to-face in Brisbane tomorrow, where they'll map out a bushfire response plan that could save lives in the coming months. Federal Minister Murray Watt says it's shaping up to be the first significant fire season since Black Summer, when 26 lives were lost. At government's disposal is a national fleet of firebombing aircraft, including helicopters and large air tankers, that can be moved to high-risk areas. There was a royal commission after Black Summer. It has seen an increase in spending, $94 million this year, to ensure authorities are prepared. And responses to bushfires will be coordinated by the National Situation Room. The ministers will also be briefed by the Weather Bureau tomorrow, forecasters tipping spring to be warm and dry for much of the country. A worrying recipe when combined with increased vegetation. Queensland, New South Wales, the Northern Territory in particular, as well as parts of South Australia and Victoria, are at risk of significant bushfires. Gemma, we can also reveal tonight that Australia's first National Bushfire Preparedness Summit will take place right here in Canberra next month. That'll bring together about 250 experts who will simulate these conditions that are forecast this summer. Gemma, our governments are not taking any chances.
Yeah, Josh, thank you. A driver is dead tonight after his van collided with a school bus in Victoria. To Blake Johnson. Blake, good evening. Students were on board when the vehicles crashed.
Gemma, the driver of the van died at the scene. The bus driver was taken by air ambulance to Royal Melbourne Hospital with leg injuries. And thankfully, the 4 students on board that bus were not hurt. They're from Upper Yarra Secondary College. It appears the van has crossed to the wrong side of the road and colliding almost head-on with that bus. I say almost because it appears the impact has been on the front right corner of the bus, causing extensive damage to that larger vehicle. The van, there's not a lot left of that. It was almost split in two. The collision happened around 3:30 this afternoon. It is an 80km/h zone here on the Warburton Highway. The road has been closed for almost all afternoon and well into this evening. Details around the age of the van driver and the age of the students are a little unclear tonight, but it is a tragic end to the day for one family, that of the van driver, the bus driver in hospital, but those 4 students luckily at home with their families tonight. Gemma?
Blake, thank you for the tragic details. The victims of paedophile principal Malka Leifer say they're relieved tonight she can't prey on anyone else after being sentenced to jail. Grace Fitzgibbon has the details from our newsroom. Grace, good evening. How long will Malka Leifer be locked up?
Gemma, the 56-year-old has been sentenced to 15 years behind bars for sexually abusing students at an ultra-Orthodox Jewish school in Melbourne. Leifer fled to Israel in 2008 after details of the assault allegations first emerged. Victoria Police submitted a request for her extradition in 2014. She fought the allegations all the way until Israel finally signed an extradition order in 2020. And to this day, the mother of 8 still maintains her innocence and has shown no signs of remorse. The court heard she's a shadow of her former self and remains isolated from other inmates. Gemma Leifer will be eligible for parole in 6 years, and after that, she'll likely be deported.
Grace, thank you for the update. The world is searching and waiting for answers tonight after Vladimir Putin's former confidant turned enemy, Yevgeny Prigozhin, was killed in a suspected assassination. The boss of the Wagner mercenary group was listed as being on a private jet that crashed between Moscow and St. Petersburg. All 10 people on board died, including 3 crew members. The warlord's death comes exactly 2 months to the day since he led a botched mutiny against the Russian president. Let's bring in Dr. Jessica Genoa, international relations expert at Flinders University in Adelaide. Jessica, thank you for joining us this evening. How likely is it that this was an assassination?
So this morning, Australia time, it was really not clear what had happened, and there were a few different possible scenarios in terms of the plane crash that supposedly had Yevgeny Prigozhin on board. As the day wore on and more evidence came to light, it seemed increasingly likely that this was indeed a successful assassination attempt on Yevgeny Prigozhin's life, most likely coming straight from the top from President Putin himself.
But does that signal the end of Vladimir Putin's problems?
It certainly does not. So there are a few factors here that are going to still create challenges for President Putin going forward, even if he was behind this and it was a successful assassination attempt and Yevgeny Prigozhin has indeed died. Now, one of those factors is the fact that it took 2 months from that attempted mutiny until this alleged death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, which has made Putin look somewhat indecisive, weak. It's made him kind of lose that atmosphere of power, which is so important to him in terms of maintaining stability and control within the Russian domestic context. And then secondly, Prigozhin actually was quite a popular guy and had a lot of supporters and followers, both from within the Wagner Group itself, but also other sort of hardline ultra-nationalists within Russia who are not satisfied with the way in which Russia is fighting the war in Ukraine and actually supported a lot of the sentiments that Yevgeny Prigozhin was expressing.
Dr. Wagner came to a lot of people's attention through their fighting in Ukraine, but they operate in a lot of places, particularly in Africa. What does it mean for their operations there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what's interesting in this regard is that it was not only Yevgeny Prigozhin who was supposedly on that flight, but on the list of members on that flight were really a number of the top leadership of the Wagner Group, including the co-founder of the Wagner Group, Dmitry Utkin, who would have been a kind of natural person to step in if Yevgeny Prigozhin was out of action. So really, if it is true that all the people who were listed to be on that flight were there and they have all died, it means that the current leadership of the Wagner Group has really been eliminated. And this has flow-on effects for Wagner operations on the African continent, for example, outside of that also within Syria. And these are operations that are very lucrative and really flow money back to the Russian state. So they're something that Putin cares about. They're very valuable to Putin, and he would certainly want to keep that kind of operational infrastructure in place.
Putin has done an incredible job in the last couple of decades of maintaining an image of being indestructible. But could the net be closing in now? Do you think Putin will still be Russia's president by the end of the year?
So by the end of this year, I can't give a decisive answer. However, if you were to ask me, would President Putin still be in power in Russia by the end of next year, I would say it's more likely that he will not be than that he will be. And I really do think that there was a kind of inflection point with that attempted mutiny from Prigozhin towards the end of June. And regardless of whether Prigozhin might now have been eliminated, I think that fatally dented that image of power and control of Putin, but also showed that there were real cracks within the way in which Putin could maintain control, could get the military to sort of go against the Wagner Group, which they were obviously hesitant to do. So following on from that, and also the way in which Russia has not succeeded in, claiming military successes in Ukraine in the way that it would have hoped, I would certainly say that Putin's regime is at risk.
Dr. Jessica Genoa, thank you so much for your very insightful analysis.
Thanks for having me on the program.
New tonight, a Moscow court has ruled an American journalist will remain in jail until at least November 30. Evan Gershkovich from the Wall Street Journal has been held by Russian authorities since the end of March. The reporter's accused of spying, and there's no date set yet for a trial. US officials are looking into a possible prisoner exchange to get him out. A royal reschedule tonight, the King and Queen to make a state visit to France next month. The monarchs were originally meant to visit earlier this year, but had to cancel due to violent pension protests. Charles and Camilla will visit Paris and Bordeaux for 2 days from the 20th of September. There was quite the welcome party at our shiny new studios at 7 News headquarters this evening. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, was among the dignitaries that stopped in to officially open our state-of-the-art facility. Network Chairman Kerry Stokes, 7 West Media CEO James Warburton, and the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns welcoming the broadcasting team to its home.
The fact that I think people want to watch the news here on Channel 7 at night because they trust it. We know that people go to an enormous effort to check details, to actually be accountable, for it to be real. And in today's world, that is more important, I think, than it has ever been before. And one of the reasons why your news programs rate so well is I think people get it. People know that when they look at their device, what's popping up isn't necessarily right. But there is that trusted nightly news.
A plaque commemorating the occasion unveiled. Still to come, the cruel cost of endometriosis, a crippling chronic disease that not only sets women back physically, but financially too. Unpaid time off, missed promotions, even job losses. And advocates want something done about it. We'll hear from them next on The Latest from 7 News. Tomorrow tomorrow's Equal Pay Day, women need to work on average an extra 56 days after the new financial year just to make the same annual salary as men. Now, among other barriers to parity are chronic debilitating diseases like endometriosis. It currently affects 1 in 9 women. 70% of sufferers have to take unpaid time off work to manage their symptoms. Then, of course, there are the missed employment opportunities. 1 in 3 have been overlooked for a promotion due to the disease, while 1 in 6 have lost their jobs. According to a government report, endometriosis is thought to cost our economy $9.6 billion each year. 2/3 of that is down to a loss in productivity. The average cost to a patient and society is around $30,000 each year. The CEO of Endometriosis Australia, Marie Davenport, joins me now in the studio. Marie, how can workplaces better support women with this disease?
Well, the first thing is to have a conversation so that the woman or those assigned female at birth have the conversation with their line manager, with their workmates, with their employer to say, this is a disease that I have. These are the symptoms that it causes. This is how it's impacting me in my work and my productivity. So how do we support those with endometriosis in the workplace? Well, basically we look at flexibility. We look at having time out breaks, heat packs, and having an endo-friendly workplace.
We saw the statistics just now, very high. What are some anecdotes though? What have you heard about people's actual experiences in the workplace?
Look, so many, as you said, lose their jobs because of endometriosis, but so many also are overlooked for a promotion.
And Marie, one of the really pernicious aspects of this disease is that it can take so long to be diagnosed. So you can suffer for years without knowing it. What does that delay do to people and their careers?
Well, it takes on average in Australia 6.5 years to diagnose the condition. The impact of not having a diagnosis is that the lesions that are, needing sometimes to be removed through surgery cause havoc throughout the whole body. Terrible pain, cause brain fog, fatigue and all of these really dreadful symptoms to live with. But the other great challenge with endometriosis is fertility. So if these women aren't diagnosed in a timely way, then their fertility and their opportunity to get pregnant is really adversely affected. But it's also, just your quality of life.
You also need more resources. Now, there are many aspects of the healthcare system asking for more funding, but given how common endometriosis is, it does seem rather underfunded.
It is, and I often say, if this were a male disease, if men out there were suffering like those with endometriosis suffer, we would have had a lot more attention and a lot more money into research. We're 5 years into the National Action Plan on Endometriosis, which is a world first. However, it's getting that money out there. So even after 5 years, organisations like ours who actually interface and represent and advocate for the patient, we have not received $1 of government funding. We know that 1 in 13 women with endometriosis have to self-fund their operations because they can't wait for years on the public health waiting list.
And Marie, if I've understood correctly, once you do get your diagnosis eventually, all you can really do is manage your symptoms at this point.
That's correct. This is a lifelong, life-defining disease. There is no known cause, there is no cure. So women have symptoms from the age of, or girls, it starts sometimes from the age of 8. Women have symptoms throughout their life. And we need to do better around not just self-managing, but also having person-centred care. So you've got a conversation going on with the GP, with the specialists, with your allied health, with your physio, to ensure that there's a whole community of health care.
It does feel like we're entering an era where more taboo topics or things that have been taboo historically are now being spoken about more freely, and there's a lot more understanding. I very much hope that endometriosis falls into that bucket. Marie, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
We'll take a look at the Friday forecast shortly. Plus, setting the bar high, 2 friends locked in a gruelling pole vault duel reach an unbelievable pact and share the spoils. That's next. Let's take a look at your Friday weather forecast across the country. It'll be a sunny one in Sydney tomorrow, tops of 22 degrees. A bit of grey over in Brisbane, 18 and mostly sunny in Canberra. The chance of a shower in Melbourne. Hobart expecting some drizzle. Partly cloudy in Adelaide, highs of 20, and blue skies for Perth and Darwin. Elsewhere, a wet one in Cairns, morning frost clearing for a fine day in Orange, 16 in Launceston, and hot in Karratha, 31 degrees. Tonight's final frame is a united front. Nina Kennedy is tonight Australia's first ever women's pole vault champion. The 26-year-old broke her own national record twice at the World Final in Budapest, incredibly clearing 4.9 metres. American Katie Moon, the reigning world and Olympic champion, cleared the same mark. Now, instead of continuing to jump and fight it out, the women decided to share the gold medal. The pair has been friends for a long time and says they're honoured to go even on the top spot. A winning act of kindness and a dream come true. Our final frame. Thank you for your company this Thursday from the team that is The Latest. I'm Gemma Acton. Good night.
Stream 7 News anytime, live and on demand on 7plus. And with 7news.com.au, you'll know the news now.